I've got another album for those of you sick of all the shallow, overhyped pop crap that seems to have dominated 98% of the mainstream music press over the last couple years. Hi everyone, I'm Paul Crayson and you're watching Music Mentions. Today I'm doing a deep dive review of DIIV's long-awaited new release titled Frog in Boiling Water. By now, you've probably figured out that I only do reviews of albums that I think deserve your listening attention. As a matter of fact, if you see an album review thumbnail on my channel, you can be about 100% sure that it's an album that I recommend for very specific reasons. The purpose of these videos is to really get you to understand what these reasons are, and that's why they tend to be a little longer than most other review channels' videos. For the most part, the videos are not intended for you casual top 10 pop music listeners. They're really intended for true music obsessives for which music is an integral daily part of what brings richness and meaning to the fabric of their lives. With that out of the way, let's dig into this latest DIIV album. Formed in 2011 in Brooklyn, New York, this band is a four-piece that's been variously described as indie rock, dream pop, or shoegaze. Although the band's name is spelled D-I-I-V, it's pronounced DIIV, and the reason for this is that the band's original name was spelled correctly as D-I-V-E, after the Nirvana song, but there was a Belgian industrial band from the 1990s with the same name, so they changed the spelling. Their debut album, Ocean, was released in 2012 to widespread critical acclaim, and their career was on the way. They proceeded to then release Is the Is-Are in 2016 and Deceiver in 2018. Some members have had personal struggles over the years, and there have been a few personnel changes over the years as well. But fortunately for us, they've managed to hold things together. Now let's cover the band members. First we have Zachary Cole Smith. He's 39 years old and goes by his second name, Cole. He's the band's centerpiece and was the one that put the band together. He writes most of the songs as the vocalist and plays the guitar. He also plays some synth on Frog. Next we have Andrew Bailey. I don't have his specific age, but I believe he's also in his late 30s. He was a childhood friend of Smith when they both grew up in Connecticut. He plays guitar on this album. Bailey and Smith are the only two original band members in the latest configuration. Next we have Colin Caulfield. He's also in his late 30s and joined the band in 2013. He's a multi-instrumentalist and plays the bass and also contributes some synth on this album. And finally we have Ben Newman. He's in his mid-30s and is the band's drummer. He joined DIIV in 2015. He likewise contributes some synth on Frog. Now let's quickly cover some release notes. This album was released on May 24th of 2024, and it's DIIV's fourth full album of original studio material. It was released on Fantasy Records and was produced and mixed by Chris Cody, who has worked with great bands like Future Islands, Beach House, Slow Dive, and Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Mastering was done by the legendary Howie Weinberg. There were 5 singles released prior to the release of the album. Now let's go over the track listing and some song lengths. There are only 10 songs on Frog in Boiling Water, and Reflected is the shortest song at 3 minutes and 36 seconds. Fender on the Freeway is the longest at 5 minutes and 34 seconds. The total album length is a tad over 43 minutes. Let's dig into the album title and the cover. The album title is Frog in Boiling Water, and this refers to the famous premise that if a frog is put into tepid water that is then very slowly brought to a boil, it will not perceive danger and be cooked to death, unlike if it were put directly into boiling water, in which it would try to jump out. This story is utilized as a metaphor to illustrate the failure or unwillingness of people to recognize gradual threats. This is one of the central themes to this album. By the way, the frog in boiling water is just a myth, and a frog will jump out of warming water before it gets killed. Here's what the band said about the album when they announced its release. If you drop a frog in a pot of boiling water, it will, of course, frantically try to clamber out. But if you place it gently in a pot of tepid water and turn the heat on low, the frog will sink into a tranquil stupor, exactly like one of us in a hot bath. And before long, with a smile on its face, it will unresistingly allow itself to be boiled to death. Once again, folks, this is a myth. We understand the metaphor to be one about a slow, sick, and overwhelmingly banal collapse of society under end-stage capitalism, the brutal realities we've maybe come to accept as normal. That's the boiling water, and we are the frogs. The album is more or less a collection of snapshots from various angles of our modern condition, which we think highlights what this collapse looks like and, more particularly, what it feels like. The album cover is a mystery as far as who the artist is. However, you'll immediately notice two things. One, the band's name does not appear anywhere, and two, the word "in" is missing from the album title. I'm assuming that they decided not to include it since the word boiling contains the letters I and N, and also that most people understand the phrase regardless of its inclusion on the album cover. The background is fire engine red, aligning with the concept of hot boiling water, while the letters are huge and in black and white. You'll also notice that the letters are somewhat cut off around the edges. The lettering gives off a kind of three-dimensional feeling and appears to be made out of what looks like clay to me, but I'm supposing they meant for the lettering to look like boiled frog parts, maybe? This isn't an album cover that blends into the background. It's made to stand out and grab you with that shade of red. Overall, it's a fine cover, but for me, there's nothing truly exceptional about it. Now for some general album observations before we get into the songs themselves. This album is closer in sound to the last album, DIIV, than it is to their first two records, but it doesn't have those sonic edges that DIIV has, and which I love, by the way. Frog is often a sonically thick and dense record, and it fits comfortably in the shoegaze genre, but it has a strong 90s feel to it. There are subtle sounds that reveal themselves the more you listen to it. It's a record you want to really lean into. The production and mixing are stellar. They're able to create a wide sound stage and space while the instruments blend beautifully in a swirl of melodic distortion. You'll notice that the vocals are often barely discernible, making Smith's voice truly act as another melodic instrument. The overall vibe is like a slow, massive wave washing over you. It really creates this floaty and trippy-like atmosphere and listening experience. Now let's get into these songs. The first one is In Amber. Right away, there's a mood established with this ominous guitar figure that starts the song. The pace is on the slower side, which further grounds the tune's dark mood. Cole's vocals are heavily reverbed as he delivers the lyrics gently and melodically in an almost whispered style. After the first verse, we get a jump in energy as a heavily distorted guitar plays simple bent and sliding notes. However, the song also has pauses in this energy when it just seems to kind of float. It's like the tune is breathing in and out a few times. Let's look at some of the lyrics from one of the verses. My eyes have seen it all. Nothing's forgotten. I find it hard to imagine a shock, the rotating villains profit off suffering. A doomsday machine glitch is our new god. Cole appears to be very jaded and resigned as he witnesses the changes in society that we're all living through. He also mentions wanting to disappear several times during this song. It's a simple statement of his observations on the sad state of the world with no solutions and no apparent hope. It's a thematically dark tune. DIIV doesn't try to ease us into this album. It throws us directly into the deep end with this haunting but melodic song that establishes the overall somber mood of Frog. It's a fine album opener. Song number 2 is called Brown Paper Bag. This was the first single and maybe the most melodically / catchy song on Frog. The tempo seems a little kicked up from In Amber, but it's still relaxed and somewhat languid. The drums sound great here, with beautiful, slow decaying cymbal crashes, and the distorted washes of guitar are likewise just excellent. Cole's voice is again subdued and whispery and wide in the sound stage. Like In Amber, the shoegaze vibe is strong here and the song equally dynamic. Here are the chorus lyrics. So there I go, torn, faded, a brown paper bag, stuck on the ground, down, wasted, just a brown paper bag again. The band has mentioned that while the rest of the album focuses on the larger external world, this song focuses on specific internal experience of living in it. Obviously, it isn't the happiest of experiences for DIIV. This is a beautiful sounding song with oodles of atmosphere to it. One of the album's highlights for sure. Song number 3 is called Raining on Your Pillow, and we get another slight step up in tempo on what is the 5th single from Frog. Cole's voice sounds really incredible, melodic, dreamy, and kind of floaty. It sounds like there's an underpinning of synths on which the guitars sit, but this time the guitars are more laid back and tunefully arpeggiated. The sonic edges present in the first 2 tracks are missing here, resulting in an almost hypnotic type of atmosphere as the song builds and builds towards the end. Here are the lyrics from the first verse. In a waterfall, and I waited for you. Where the order stalled, it wasn't normal. We're just fodder for the army op. Here's what the band said about this song. Raining on Your Pillow is a song which brings to mind the shameful past and present of American imperialism. Lost in a terrifying landscape, a lone soldier ruminates on the existence of a landscape of his own, far removed from conflict. Does it matter if this place is real or not? Is a false sense of hope enough to give our lives meaning in the midst of despair? Quite the subject matter, pondering if we can fool ourselves into a positive mindset when our current reality sucks. I can't emphasize how great the production on this tune is. It's simply fantastic. I love everything about this song. It's infinitely listenable and wildly beautiful. Right now, this is my favorite on the album. Song number 4 is Frog in Boiling Water. This was the 4th single and is the album's title track. Cole's vocals sound just amazing on this mid-tempo song, and the chorus is just a monster. Very melodic and memorable. Drums are played simply but come to life a little bit over the last quarter of the running time when the energy levels up a notch or two with these killer guitar washes. This one also has a strong 90s sense to it. You'll know what I mean when you listen to it. Here are the chorus lyrics. Wasted all the commons, eluded golden calf, ivory towers and ivory crosses. My livelihood is rotting in your hand, man. If we look at these lyrics from the perspective of societal collapse and the unaware frog slowly boiling to death, we can interpret that Cole's referring to the ruining of the environment, our common resource. Also, some religious imagery here with the looted golden calf and the ivory crosses suggests plundering of the populace. This is another super strong track and another standout on this record. This is another one you can just put on repeat and not get tired of. Song number 5 is Everyone Out. This was the third single and is the most laid-back song on Frog. The energy ratcheted down with the drums only coming in about halfway through. The song starts with what sounds like an acoustic or nylon guitar played with harmonics. Cole's vocals and the vocal melody are really the highlight, as is the chilled vibe of this track. Here are the lyrics from the second verse. Ready for my life, have faith. This beautiful time will be all mine. I'll bring you all down. Try and stop me now. I'm ready for my rise. Just wait. This one is tough to decipher. Other than the song in general appears to be about escaping from something. This second verse also suggests something like the rise of maybe an evil person or a devil of sorts. That's about the best I can do with the lyrics here. This is a moody and atmospheric song. Everyone Out allows us to chill a little after the first, more aggressive tunes. It's a fine song, but I think it would have served better probably as the album closer. Song number 6 is called Reflected. This is the shortest song on Frog, and it ramps things up in intensity. It's very dynamic, breaking down, then slamming us with guitars a couple of times. The guitar sections are the best parts, as the melodies are probably some of the weaker ones on this album. There's also a breakdown about 3/4 of the way in which I think kills the momentum a little too much, but that last quarter of the tune rewards your patience as you get slammed with distorted guitars. Here are the lyrics from the second verse. Look in my eyes, repeat the lie, we can still have hope. Remind me why our parasites are still in control. Another pessimistic sentiment, this time about not having any hope as we give in to those in control, aka the parasites. Once again, this aligns with Frog's theme of end-stage capitalism and societal decline. For me, this is the weakest track. The melodies could have been better, and I think the progression is kind of weak. I don't think it's a skipper in the context of a full album listen, but if you need a quick dive hit from this album, it's not likely going to be this one. Song number 7 is Somber the Drums. More mid-tempo action. This one's structure is pretty interesting. There are only 3 verses, no choruses, but there's an amazing instrumental section after the first verse with some of the best sounding guitar to be found on this album. There are also some interesting sound effects or samples that kind of pop in and out. Cole's voice tends to be back in the mix on most of the album, where you can barely understand the words, but here the words are even more hazy, especially the last 2 verses. Here are the first verse's lyrics. Somber the drums, the folks from out of town look on, unfeeling, all alone. Stuff your pockets full of stones for no one to see. It appears the lyrical theme is about an invasion from out-of-towners as Cole prepares to fend them off with stones of some kind. This could just be a take on American divisiveness as societal polarization continues to afflict us. I like Somber the Drums. This is a track that got better with every play. I really like the mood it creates, and the performances and production, just stellar. It's not the strongest, but it's certainly better than Reflected. Song number 8 is Little Birds. This is another bit of a laid-back track and fairly dynamic like most of Frog's songs. There are some simple synth notes going on, and we get some occasional detuned guitar notes with the whammy bar being pulled away from the guitar, which creates a cool unstable or unstable type of effect. Cole's voice is subdued again. As a matter of fact, the whole track results in kind of a perfect rainy day song. The song ends with some snippets of voices bouncing around between the left and right channels. Here are the lyrics from what sounds like a bridge section. Make time for the war. I can't find my time. This one's for the world. I'm losing my mind. Changing for the worse. Fighting all the time. Came home in a hearse. Leave the past behind. More allusions to a war and a struggle against a world that's changing for the worse. Once you start exploring the lyrics on Frog, it doesn't take long to determine that DIIV's outlook on the current world is rather bleak and gloomy. Little Birds is another solid, albeit gloomy track, and another one that really grew on me with more time. It's a real mood piece. Song number 9 is called SoulNet, and this was the second single. It was originally only released via a website that the band had created at soul-net.co. Check this site out sometime. It's a real mind trip. Also, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the site's page, you'll be able to download stems from the song and play with them in your own sonic creations. Anyway, I really dig the guitars here. There's an occasional chime on them that has a texture or a layer that is different from most of the other songs on the record. And yes, the dynamics are there again, with the song breaking down occasionally before swelling into swirls of guitar. Cole's vocals are exceptionally floaty and hazy here as he extends a lot of the words, which you still can't quite make out. Here's the second verse. We were lost. Now we have something. They own our lives and harvest our suffering. Turn from the light. Cycle is karmic. I want to be nothing. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope in the first two lines and the phrase cycle is karmic, but this seems to be the exception and not the rule, as Cole states he wants to be nothing in the last line. Dark stuff. SoulNet is maybe the most experimental sounding song on the album, but only at the edges with some various sound effects jumping around. It's still melodic and moody, and I really dig it. Song number 10 is Fender on the Freeway. Now we arrive at the final and longest song. This is a slow builder, ramping up the intensity as it progresses towards the end. Lots of repeating little guitar lines create kind of a hypnotic state for the listener. Cole's vocals on the final part of the song are super buried in the mix, as instruments kind of overwhelm any attempt at really understanding what he's singing. Again, dynamics are present as the tune goes from peaks to valleys and back. Here are the lyrics from the second verse. No one has returned from death to show that life on earth had really made them grow. Systems fails and empires fall, walking the earth like ants on a sugar ball. More moroseness and darkness are to be found here. Cole even alludes to God having abandoned us like a car fender on the freeway towards the end of this song. However, the verse here contains what I think is my favorite lyric on Frog, as Cole sings, walking the earth like ants on a sugar ball. Just great imagery. This song really works from a production and atmosphere perspective. It's not the strongest track, but it sits somewhere comfortably in the middle for me. So what do I think about this latest album from DIIV? First of all, it's not a stretch to say that this is DIIV's most fully realized and mature sounding record. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have the hard edges that are found on Deceiver, their most shoegazy sounding release. It sounds like a lot of work and effort and toil went into it, and it definitely pays off for the listener, especially when listening to Frog all the way through as a full album listen. I'm seeing my first DIIV show in a few days, and I'm super excited to hear how they pull this record off on stage. This is an album you want to put on at night or a dark, rainy day with your phone silenced, the volume cranked up. your eyes closed, and your favorite adult beverage or cannabis product of choice by your side. It's a tremendous headphone album as well. This album is a no-brainer for fans of dive, shoegaze, or even 90s indies rock. It's also a non-abrasive listen for those of you who tend to shy away from the traditional, harder-sounding shoegaze stuff. It's a really beautiful and lush-sounding record that demands a few spins before you can fully digest all of its goodness. Be patient with it, and it will continue to reward you with every listen. 2024 has been such a stellar year for music, especially guitar-based stuff, and I'll tell you right now that I think Frog and Boiling Water, this is going to be a shoe-in for my best of 2024 album list at the end of this year. So with that said, I'm giving this album a very well-deserved 8.5 out of 10. It is a fantastic listen. Your mileage may vary, though, and you guys know the drill. Let me know in the comments below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you not care? Let me know, and let me know why. All right? Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Love all you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.